Welcome to Art Talk with April. I'm April Harris of Inked April and the host of this podcast. This is season 4. We have some amazing artists on. I can't wait to share them with you. So let's get started. Hi everyone. Welcome to Art Talk with April. Today we have a very exciting guest. This is Corinna Nicole and she's a painter. And you're located in Huntsville?
Huntsville, Alabama, yes.
All right. Well, I'm so excited to have you on because we've talked, we kind of worked together with the ALWCA, and I just love your work. So I think this is going to be really fun. And I really like to get started with these conversations around kind of childhood and like how you get into art and where it all comes from. So how did you get started?
Oh man.
I'm gonna go way back,
Yeah. So I'm an only child. So a lot of my childhood was me entertaining myself, in my playroom, figuring out how to keep myself busy. And I distinctly remember that coloring, drawing was one of those ways that I like to pass time. Of course, I also distinctly remember enjoying skating around the house in my Fisher Price, the red, yellow, blue skates.
Yeah.
But when I wasn't doing that or making up dances for my parents, I was coloring and drawing. And I really always enjoyed I think they're called spire where you're doing the little shapes. So I really always enjoyed like the artsy side of things. And so I think that's probably where it started, just for fun. Definitely did not know that you could grow up to be an artist until I was probably already graduated from high school and trying to figure out like what I wanted to do in college. So it was really just a childhood, how I like to entertain myself and pass time. But
I mean,
yeah,
and you don't know why, that one thing, like, really, it's fun. You just enjoy it, so you do more of it.
yeah, absolutely.
So you went to school, and did you go to school for art or something else?
I did. So I went to University of Montevallo for art for my undergraduate studies. I originally applied as a graphic design concentration,
Mm.
and I hadn't really taken any graphic design courses. It was just one of those things where I knew I enjoyed being creative, but I didn't really know how I wanted to pursue a career in that. And it was kind of at the suggestion of my dad. Well, you've always enjoyed designing book covers for your projects, for your reports. So why not go into graphic design? And it was just like, okay. And I did like a 1 day shadowing of a graphic designer. And I was like, yeah, this would be cool, I think. And in addition to that, the idea that graphic design is like one of the few artistic paths that you could take that would guarantee income, I guess is what people think. I know that's not entirely true.
I know.
It's
Everybody's
very
like, "Oh,
competitive.
computers are involved. You got this."
Yeah, yeah. So I think that was kind of the catalyst for that, and kind of was encouraged to shy away from the starving artist life,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go into graphic design. Never took a class. I think I took like one just like digital media class. Had to build my own website. Did not love it. I was like, this is too much work. I don't know how people do this. The coding and all that was just not up my alley. And so then I took a intro to painting course, and that was my first time experiencing oil paint. And I just really loved the class. I love the experience, like the buttery texture of oil paint. The teacher was really cool, Misty Bennett, shout out to her, at University of Montevallo. And I was just like, okay, this is something I can really get behind. Like, I just love the feel of painting, the experience of painting. Obviously, if you look back at my art from back in the day, I had no clue what I was doing. But Montevallo was a really supportive school as far as experiencing all the different types of media. But I just fell in love with painting. And so I started taking all the painting classes that I could
Yeah.
and switched my concentration over to painting, and graphic design was out the window.
It's so funny that you say that because that's exactly why I went into graphic design because my parents were like, "Well, this could be a job." You know? You're
Yeah.
not gonna be homeless.
Yeah, that really is. And it's sad that that is kind of like the societal idea that we
Yeah.
have of fine arts, is that you're not going to have a career. It's going to be very difficult.
Mhm.
Um, and it is difficult. It is a lot of work
Mhm.
that you have to put into it. And I mean, to be honest, I still work full time in the corporate world.
Yeah.
So I'm juggling both, a corporate job and my passion for painting and wanting to make that a full-time career. So it's definitely not necessarily easy, and I think when we go to school for it, of course, we all have these like idealized visions of what it would be like to be an artist, and
Mhm.
just having this grand creative life.
Yeah.
Uh, that would be great.
Yeah, no.
It isn't necessarily true for everyone or for most artists,
Yeah.
and that's okay. I think everyone has to realize that it's a unique journey,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, you're doing something that you love. Like, you're doing something that is, like, just coursing through your veins. Like, you have to get this paint onto canvas. It's just a passion that you have, and it's not about making a lot of money. It's not about like being a well-known artist necessarily. It's really about, putting what's within you, what is wanting to come out of you onto canvas, and being able to share that with everyone else, and being able to share something that people maybe don't think about on a regular basis, and just getting people to think differently and explore ideas differently. And that's really the goal of being a visual artist. And that's where I have to, you know, keep remembering that that is the purpose.
Yeah. Oh, it's so hard. It's like, I think too, like, I don't know how old you are, but I grew up before internet. Like,
Mhm.
internet was around when I was in college, but when internet really built up and you could see all the other artists online doing things, it was like, "Oh, so there are ways to do this."
Yes,
And it's,
especially
like, exciting to see
it
other
is.
people doing stuff.
It is. It's exciting. It's inspiring.
Yeah.
Um, and it's also scary, just to be honest. Like, I grew up not really having, internet became more popular when I was in college. I remember I was at Montevallo when Facebook first became a thing, and that's when social media first to me was like introduced, and it was just this whole new world opened up, right? And before that, you didn't realize, what necessarily everyone else was doing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now that social media is such a big part of being a visual artist, it's really great because it's motivational. You see what other people are doing, and it reminds you to keep being creative, to keep making art. And then you just have to be careful to not let that influence you the other way, where it becomes overwhelming and you're like comparing yourself to other artists and feel like you're not doing enough or not doing good enough. That's the dangerous part of social media. And, comparison is the thief of joy, right? So you have
Seriously.
to be really careful with that as well.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome is real.
I don't know how I manage it, but I just, like, for whatever reason, I don't get very, like, competitive or comparison. It's like I remember being younger and opening up an artist like, a book about art, and
Mhm.
would just be inspired by the pictures that are in the book. I kind of feel that way about social media a little bit. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that." And I'm not thinking, "Oh, mine's not as good as that."
Yeah.
Don't do that. I don't
Yeah.
know. I just don't have that mindset, but I think maybe it's because didn't grow up with that. And so I can see how like really a lot of younger artists would be very intimidated because they didn't really know anything other than that. Like and it makes me also wonder like did younger artists have that same feeling like we didn't know anybody who was an artist, a professional artist, like in real life. So that was like something that was unattainable, really. Only the few get to do that. But when you have social media and the internet, you're like, oh, there's all these millions of artists.
Yeah.
And you're like, uh,
Yeah, I think that's more so what it is. It's just the overwhelming like experience of like, whoa, like there is a whole world. And again, it's the double-sided, like it's super exciting. And for me, it definitely has been more leaning towards the inspirational side, like, seeing what other artists are making, seeing, the content they're putting out, wanting to make art as well. Um, that has been super important for me to be a part of as well.
yeah.
Um, and I think one of the biggest reasons that I love being in college, so I went to Montevallo and then later went to UC Berkeley. And one of the biggest things that I loved about that was being surrounded by other artists
Oh, yeah.
because it inspired me to make art. I wanted to be making art all the time. And the most noticeable thing after I graduated from college and not being surrounded by artists every day was that it was really easy to move away from making art. It was really easy to be distracted by just watching TV, doing laundry, the mundane routine things of life. When you're not surrounded by artists all the time, you kind of have to put more focus on like creating a schedule for yourself to make art, and that's hard.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest reasons why I really wanted to have a studio at Lowe Mill, which is a public arts facility in Huntsville, because I needed to be back surrounded by other artists. I needed to have that inspiration all around me where I get to walk around, see other artists working in their studios, see
Yeah.
what they're doing. And just it's like you feel like the energy just flowing, coursing through Lowe Mill, and you want to make art. And
Yeah.
I didn't have that same feeling when I had my home studio. It was really hard to, get into the studio and make art. It was really easy to sit on the couch and, be on social media and seeing, watching what everybody else was making instead of me making art.
Yes. I think that would be awesome. I love that you guys have that there in Huntsville and that everybody is so involved and that there's a space. I'm like, man, I wish there were spaces like that everywhere because I mean, I just think it would be amazing because you're right. Like when you're around like a group of artists and everybody's creating, you're just like, you just like feel energetic and inspired and you're like ready to get to work.
Absolutely. It's
I love
so important.
that.
And I agree. I feel like every city should have a public arts facility like that to where, you can rent out a studio space and, no matter the size, just being surrounded by a few other artists, if it's
Oh,
four or five
yeah.
other artists, it can make a huge difference.
So your medium is primarily oil, but I really wanted to learn about your subject matter and like how that came about. Because I'm assuming that in school you weren't painting the same kinds of things. And how did this, the what do you call them?
Murmurations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun
Oh,
word.
I'm gonna let you say that word. But they're so cool. I mean, how many times have people, seen those kinds of things happening and they're like, "Oh, look at that." And then how did you get to start doing that?
Yeah. So when I was in school, I was painting primarily figurative works. So anything having to do with the human body. I was trying to at one point do really like realistic portraits, full figure bodies, and that's pretty much what my graduating show at UC Berkeley was. I did these huge paintings, figurative paintings of female nudes. And I was trying to make them as realistic as possible, which requires a lot of like attention to detail. And I think after I graduated, I kind of needed a break from that. And so I was trying to do things that were a little bit looser, more abstract, where I could just have a little bit more freedom.
Yeah.
And so one day I was just randomly scrolling videos and I came across a video of these two women that were on a canoe on a lake. And all of a sudden they witnessed this massive flock of birds that were doing these beautiful, elaborate shapes in the sky. It was like a performance.
Yeah.
And I was just in awe of that as the two girls. Obviously, they were probably more in awe because they were experiencing it in person. I was just watching a video of it and I was fascinated, and I had never seen anything like this. And so I started researching what that was, and it's a flock of starlings. And when they gather in the thousands, thousands of them will come together to flock, and they're really unique in the way that they fly, because they create these, just performative shapes in the sky that shift so quickly and so beautifully that you cannot help but to just want to watch. And I felt immediately compelled to make a painting about it. So even though it was this really like fluid, moving image, my practice was painting. And so I wanted to see if I could get that down in a two-dimensional, static way.
Yeah.
And painting was the way that I knew. So I made a painting about it. And that was my first time making a murmuration painting. And I thought it was just going to be like a one-off painting. I just get it out my system, explore that, and then go back to doing my other work. And it kind of was that way. I went back to doing figurative, but every now and then when I needed a break and needed something more abstract, I would do a murmuration painting. And probably in the last 3-4 years, that has really been my primary focus. I've transitioned entirely to doing their paintings, but I want them to feel like they're moving. So I try to make them feel like dances in a way. I want them to captivate the audience the way a live murmuration would. So I want the audience to stop in their tracks really and just feel in the zone with the work, to where they can feel like they were there or they're watching the movement. They know what the next move is going to be, where it's going, and just kind of imagine this experience or recall one that they've actually seen in real life. So I want it to be really kind of where it captivates the audience.
Wow. And I mean, you really do capture that, like the organic sort of like the wet and the how they kind of overlap, and it'll be like darker in some areas and you can kind of see through in some parts where I guess the birds are more spread out, and I mean that's just amazing.
Thank you.
I love it. I thought, how does she come about that? Because it's one of those like just one of those amazing things you see out in nature where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, whoa, what is happening there?
Yeah, it's like a natural phenomena. It's just like there's no way this is a
Yeah.
real thing, but it is, And I've just really been fascinated. A large part of it is like just the beauty of the performative dance, but also like digging more into it. And so researchers have tried to study them and understand, how they can move so fluidly without ever colliding into each other. And so from what they've been able to observe, they believe that each starling shadows its 7 closest neighbors. So when one starling moves, the 7 around it will shift in the same direction. And so there's really no one leader. They all will respond to each other. And thinking about that collective intelligence, just the interconnectedness, that is a really beautiful idea to me, that they each make their own decisions, right? But they're all influenced by each other as well. And
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Oh
it's
my gosh. I'm thinking about the meaning of all of that and like how I mean that can we as humans can relate to that so much, you know. But
yes,
it's like magical that they're doing that.
it
It's
is.
amazing.
It is, and I agree. There's just something about it that you cannot help but want to know more about or want to experience. It's gotten me by the hooks. I definitely struggled for a long time as I was developing as an artist in school, figuring out what my thing was as an artist.
Yeah.
Um, I felt like I didn't know where, like, what my voice was
Mm.
as an artist. I was making art about this and art about that, and it was just all really random to me, and I felt like nothing was connected. And that was one of the difficult things for me as an artist, and feeling like I was truly an artist, was that I didn't know what my art was truly about. I was still figuring it out. And it was once I started doing these paintings that I really started to feel like I had this like exciting energy in me, that I really enjoyed the process of making the art, of coming up with these ideas,
Mm.
putting these shapes onto canvas or onto paper, and really realizing that this is kind of the direction that I wanted to go into and lean into. And it took me several years, but as I really started to understand what this series was about and what my work is about now, that looking back, even though I didn't think I had a voice, even though I didn't feel like I had a direction in my art, all of my art was really about connecting with others.
Mm.
And while it didn't seem obvious to me at the time, it was all always about me trying to figure out how I fit in with other people, how
Mm.
I could connect with other people. And then thinking about these starlings and a murmuration as a whole, it is all about how they connect, how one starling connects with the rest, right? And I think it's really, if I want to put myself into the paintings, it is about me connecting with everyone around me. And I think that's the beautiful thing about these starlings,
Yeah.
that one alone is a beautiful bird, but it's when they are surrounded by all the other starlings and when they're doing these performative dances in the sky, that is really what is beautiful about them.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you're saying all of that because I mean, I totally agree. I get where you're coming from. But you know how we were just talking about how you needed to be in a public studio around other artists and the energy of all the artists making things. It's like a bunch of artists.
Yes, absolutely.
I was like, yeah, of course.
It's all connected.
Yeah. So much meaning.
Yes, yes,
Oh, I
agree.
love that. And I think too, it's like what I've always thought about the Starlings is like it's almost like energy, like a wave of energy, and that they're just like moving all, with each other. And it's like, how do they know? How can all, those seven sense all of that movement and go with it? It's just, I mean, that's intense. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It is, and I think that's the another beautiful part about it, is that we don't know all the answers to it. Like, we can
Yeah.
make observations, we can make our guesses, but we don't know 100% how it all works. And I think that alone is kind of interesting as well. Like, we don't know how the world works entirely, right? We're all just figuring it out every day, and that's part of life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. I love it. So, you've got your studio there in Low Mill, and are you doing do you have your work in like galleries or do you do like festival shows or anything like that?
So I currently, yeah, most of my art is in my studio. So I have my studio set up in a way so that half of it is a gallery space and then half of it is my workspace. So when visitors come into my studio, they get to kind of experience both worlds. They get to experience my finished pieces, and they also get to watch me work on new pieces, and they can stop and ask me questions. So I really enjoy when people actually come into my studio and really experience all of it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I do have my work um, in like some group exhibitions. I do try to do festivals. Festivals are a really unique experience where it's super hectic. You set up your tent and you install all of your pieces, and 2 to 3 days later you take it all back down. It's super exhausting, but it's exciting. You get to meet a ton of new people get exposed to your works. So I do art festivals as well. um, and I have a solo exhibition scheduled for next year in April through the Alabama Women's Caucus for Art, and so that will be exhibited at Lowe Mill in one of the gallery spaces.
Wow, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't really know what all is going to go into that show
Yeah.
just, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, that's so fun. And like when you're one thing that just occurred to me is like what size do you typically do these paintings? Do you do all different sizes or how do you go
I
about
do. I tend to work more on the smaller scale, anything from magnet size. I think the largest piece that I have is 24 by 48 inches, so 2 by 4 feet. That a lot of it has to do with transportation, just the
Yeah.
be realistic that I can only fit certain sizes in my car.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that was one of the things when I was at UC Berkeley doing these giant paintings. It was such a pain trying to figure out how to get them from point A to point B. And I kind of told myself I never want to work that big again. Um, Not that I won't ever work super large, but I think for me, realistically, I would have to find a way that also can transport easily.
Mhm.
So, maybe working on fabric, something I can roll up. That is something I think about.
Mm.
Uh, but I tend to work generally like on 11 by 14, 18 by 24, sort of in between that size scale. Um, but yeah, it can vary. The
Yeah.
smaller I work, the harder it is for me to apply my splattering technique, where I tap the paintbrush to create the swarm formations. So typically, if I work really small, I'll use stippling technique, where I'm doing one dot at a time, and so that's a little bit more time consuming, a little bit more controlled. And then the larger I work, the looser I can work. So I can kind of have a little bit more freedom in that sense. So it
Wow.
kind of depends on how what technique I apply based on the
Yeah.
size that I work.
Yeah. So I mean the and thinking about that, that is so interesting in that you're spending more time on the smaller ones really, probably, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because 'cause
yeah,
you're having to do it dot by dot by dot in order to
yeah,
control that organic shape in the sky kind of thing.
right. It's really interesting. When I work larger, that means I'm painting more background, and I paint the backgrounds traditionally with a paintbrush, and
Yeah.
so I tend to spend more time on the background and focusing on the details, like of the trees or whatever landscape I'm painting. And then my bird formations are looser, and they are more fluid and responsive to, just what happens naturally.
Yeah.
Uh, and I kind of play with the lack of control. So, I try to kind of control where the splatter goes, but I can't control every splatter. And so a lot of times I'm responding to where a splatter went.
Mm.
I have an idea of where I want the murmuration to go, what I want it to look like, But then, oh, well, I guess I'm going that direction now. So I'm kind of responding in that way. And then when I'm working smaller, it takes me less time to work on the background,
Mhm.
but I am applying the stippling technique, working dot by dot on the swarm formation that way. So I'm spending more time on that. And so it really
Kind of
varies.
evens, kind of
Yeah, it does.
balances
It does.
out.
Yeah.
So with your landscapes in the backgrounds, are you like choosing anything in particular to paint there, or are you just inspired by certain types of landscapes, or how do you go about deciding what the landscape is?
Yeah. So I love taking pictures of sunsets.
Hmm.
So a lot of times I'm using photographs that I've taken from a sunset, and kind of I like seeing like the silhouetted trees. I'm also one that will take out information that I feel like is irrelevant. So I may take a photograph and only apply the things that I want in the painting. That's the beauty of being an artist, right?
Yeah.
You can decide what you want to incorporate and not. And then sometimes I just create landscapes in my mind. I have kind of just a general practice towards a tree line, and just kind of invented. Or if I come across a photo where I really like a cityscape or a mountainscape, I'll incorporate those elements, but I may incorporate the sunset colors from a photo that I took, and then I create the swarm in my head usually. So it's a combination of using my own photo, my imagination, and inspiration from other images that I see.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Because I mean, you're just inspired by it, and you're like, oh, I really like that, but I want to maybe put that with this, and maybe I captured a power line. I don't want the power line, whatever it is.
That's exactly what happens. Like you know, I know what my weaknesses are as an artist. Perspective is not one of them. So if I have a photo with a bunch of buildings, I'm probably not going to paint the buildings. It's just or I may imply them, but I'm not going to paint any detailed buildings. It's just not my strong suit. So we're just going to cut that out. And
I
power
hear
lines,
you
I guess
on
I'll cut
that.
them out
Oh,
too.
perspective. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm not crazy about that. I'm all about the organic stuff. I'm like, man, I just can't handle it. That's why I draw trees, is because I like the organic part of it, and I just make it up as I go along instead of having to like
exactly.
use a ruler and make
Yeah,
sure it goes in the right direction to get to it.
exactly. Yeah. There's a painting I recently did. It was a larger scale painting. It was based on a photo that I took on the way home. It's a street that I go home down every day. And so in the photo is the road.
Yeah, I saw that, I think. I
That's
think I
right.
saw that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it definitely has some perspective aspects in it. I'm not entirely sure that I got it down right, but I tried not to focus on that too much. But there were power lines in that photo, didn't include those. And there was this one tree in the foreground. And initially, I was trying to make the tree look like in the photo. And I struggled so much with it. It was just I was not doing the tree
Yeah.
justice. And after days and days and days of trying to make this tree work, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make this my own tree.
Yeah, yeah. I'm all about adding branches wherever I think they should be.
I was like, you're just not gonna see any branches. It's just gonna be a full tree. I
Yeah.
don't know if it really looks like a real tree, but it works for me. I made it my own, and I'm happy with it now.
Yeah,
And
I remember thinking it was really great. So there wasn't anything that I was like, wait a minute, that's not right.
good, good, good to know.
Oh, that's fun. I did think I was like, oh, okay, she captured somewhere that was close by her that she sees every day. I thought that was really neat. It kind of gave it like a little, something more personal to you as an artist, something that you really do see every single day.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
It's in a really like particular spot. So I live close to my parents, and it's actually right before you get to my parents' neighborhood. And so that is kind of like this marker of almost home. So as soon as
Yeah.
I go up this hill and I see this tree, I know I'm about to pass my parents' neighborhood and I'm almost home and I'm ready to relax. And so it kind of just gives me this like comfort every time I see that hill. And
Yeah.
yeah, that painting is kind of special to me because it really signifies home and comfort to me.
Yeah. I love that. And then like so you've got all of your different paintings. Do you do your framing yourself or do you frame or are they gallery wrap canvas or what do you do there?
I usually work on gallery wrap canvas.
Mm.
Framing, I'm not one to make my own. I've done like I've built my own canvases before when I was in undergrad and in graduate school I think I did as well. And I think that's just one of the areas that I don't want to put all my attention on. I'd rather focus on painting. So I definitely go buy pre-made canvases,
Yeah.
and if I am going to pop it in a frame, I'm going to go buy a frame. That's just yeah.
I know, me
Learn,
too. I'm
you
like,
know,
why?
yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Like there are people who really enjoy that process of making that stuff and doing all the, like having the control I've always been so bad at it that I'm just like, this is more stress than it's
Yeah,
worth.
exactly.
These are
It's
perfectly good things that I could buy somewhere, or repurpose something. So I get it. I get
yeah.
it.
I love it for the people that do it. And I every time
Yeah.
I see someone that builds their own frames, I'm just like, oh, that's amazing. I wish I could do that. But yeah, it's just not where I put my time to.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, what's some kind of advice that you would give like younger artists who are maybe struggling with the same thing that you did? Like, where's my path? What's my direction? What is my voice? Why am I painting these things?
Yeah. Um, give yourself time, give yourself grace. I think we definitely live in a world where we want everything to happen now. We want to see now what's going to happen and have the success and figure it all now. But just give yourself time, keep making, um, and try not to let the pressures of the world and anyone else make you feel like you have to make a certain type of art or make art a certain amount of time, put out certain number of pieces. Just try not to compare yourself to anyone else and really um, just give yourself time. I think it's it's really easy to put that pressure on yourself. A lot of it was me feeling like I had expectations
Mm.
put on me to have it all figured out. When you go to school, you have these really amazing professors that put their time into you and teach you things and give you the space to create art. And in a way, you kind of want to pay back those teachers. Like you want to show, I all the time that you put into me, here's the art. You did teach me something and I'm making things now. And so you kind of put that pressure on yourself because you want to make your professors proud. um, but at the end of the day, like it's not about anyone else. It's not about anyone else's expectations. It might feel like other people are waiting on you to put art out there, but everyone has their own lives. Everyone is thinking about their own problems and has their own things that they're trying to figure out. So just do you. Just, make the art, just enjoy the experience, just enjoy the learning, try new things, experiment, figure out what works for you, and just keep making art. Just keep at it. It's all a process, and everyone has their own path. So everyone will figure out their own path, and it's all
Sure.
going to work out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. I think I personally struggle with that myself. I'm like, okay, what am I even today though, even now, I'm like, is this what I want to make? You know.
Yeah.
But I think that happens with everybody. And like I've experienced some artists too that maybe they have some sort of ailment or something happens and then they can't make the thing they used to make. So now
Mhm.
they've got to make something else or figure that out. It's almost like you never know where the path's going to take you. You don't know if you're going to be doing murmurations for the rest of time or if something will happen and you're like, okay, now I've got to do something else,
Yeah.
you know? So it's interesting that I think a lot of people struggle with that. I think it's an important thing to talk about because it can feel
Yeah.
kind of isolating too. You're like, am I the only one who doesn't know what I want to paint? You know?
Yeah. It's, all the things that you are creating while you're figuring yourself out.
Yeah.
Again, it might not seem like it's connected, but it probably is. It just, you have to get to a certain point to be able to reflect on that and figure out, what you were figuring out and what you were working through. And, without all of that experimentation, without all that exploration, you probably wouldn't get to where you are today.
Yeah.
So, you know, some artists, they know right away what they want their art to be about, and that's amazing. And some artists, they go down 50 different paths before they figure out what they want to do. And that's amazing too, because it's all just a unique experience. And yeah, I think it's just important to know that everybody has their own way. There is no one way to be an artist. There is no one way to have a career as an artist. It really is just about you figuring yourself out and giving yourself the time to do that.
Do you have any particular artists that you're really inspired by?
Oh man, that's a tough question.
You're like me, you have millions and you just don't know. You're like,
Yeah, I think for me, it's just a general admiration of artists. I can walk around Lowe Mill and or scroll through social media and see what everybody else is making. And all of it is just fascinating to me that everybody has these unique perspectives, these unique approaches to making art. It's just all inspiring. And yes, it's hard for me to say I've got this one artist that I admire and that I try to be like or create art similar to. It
yeah,
really
because
isn't.
you have a very unique subject matter and everything. This is all unique to you. So, you know,
Yeah. Um, and I see there are other artists that have made paintings about starlings and murmurations. And so those are always cool for me to come across too when I see them because we all have such a unique approach to making them.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I don't see a lot of people making art about murmurations. And so it's that's the other challenging thing is how are you unique, and that's a scary thing because ultimately we're all inspired by each other, right? We're all making art that is inspired by something, and making something that is unique is part of the process. You want to make something that stands out. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, we're all inspired by each other. And so it's cool to just see what everyone else is making.
sure.
And yeah.
Yeah. How can people get like connect with you and find your art and, purchase something?
Yeah. So Instagram, I post pretty regularly. So on there, CorinnaNicole.art.
Mhm.
I have a studio at Lowe Mill. Currently, I'm located in Studio 118, which is on the first floor. And it is, we all make our own hours, but Lowe Mill is open Wednesday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. I'm usually there during the week in the evenings and then on Saturdays. Um, Hopefully in the future, I'll be able to be there a lot more like during the week as well.
Yeah.
But you can always walk in there. My art is available to purchase. You can walk in, take something off the wall and purchase it there. And also online, my website is corinna-nicole.com. And hopefully you'll be able to insert that somewhere so that people can see
Oh,
that.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Corinna, for talking to me today. I really enjoyed it. And it's just such a fascinating way that you're expressing yourself and how meaningful it is. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun talking to you, and it's always nerve-wracking to think about, okay, I'm doing an interview, I'm going to be on camera, but it's been a lot of fun talking to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Art Talk with April. For more information on this episode, join the Facebook group, The Art Lounge. Please subscribe and share. See you next Tuesday. Hope you have a great week.